The mansion's polished marble floors glistened under the warm glow of the chandelier, but the air inside was anything but warm. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway, followed by a child's muffled sobs. Then came the sharp voice of a man used to commanding power. "She hit my son. She dared to lay a hand on him." The words tore through the silence like glass shattering. In the grand foyer, a tall man in a tailored suit stood trembling with rage. His name was Leonard Hastings, a billionaire known throughout the city not just for his wealth, but for his cold, unyielding demeanor. His jaw was clenched, his eyes bloodshot, and his grip tightened on his little boy's shoulder. On the other side of the room stood Grace Mitchell, a woman in her mid-30s. Her uniform was simple, a crisp gray maid's dress, apron tied neatly around her waist, but her hands shook as she twisted the fabric nervously. Her dark eyes brimmed with disbelief and fear. She had worked in the Hastings household for nearly 2 years, tending to every chore with care, pouring love into her work because she had none left to spare at home. Now she was staring at the man who signed her paychecks, accused of something so vile her heart pounded in her ears. "Mr. Hastings, please," Grace's voice quivered, but her words came out steady enough to hear. "I would never hurt Michael. You have to believe me." Leonard's face twisted with fury. "Don't you dare lie to me in my own house." He came running to me crying, with a bruise on his arm. "Who else would have done it? You're the one watching him." Grace turned her gaze to Michael, the boy of 7 standing close to his father's side. His small face was streaked with tears, his lower lip trembling. She had read him bedtime stories, bandaged his scraped knees, and sung softly when he woke up from nightmares. And now, that same child was standing there with a mark on his arm, her name on his father's lips as the accused. "I didn't do it," Grace whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. But Leonard wasn't listening. His fury had already turned into judgment. He pulled out his phone, dialed 911, and with a voice like steel said, "Get the police here now. My maid assaulted my son." The words nearly knocked the breath out of Grace's chest. She stepped back, her eyes wide. Assault. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a charge that could destroy her life, her reputation, her ability to feed her own daughter waiting at home. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights painted the mansion's driveway. Officer Daniel Cooper stepped out of the patrol car, a seasoned cop in his 40s with kind eyes that had seen far too much of the world's cruelty. He approached the house, his hand resting near his belt, his posture calm yet alert. Inside, Leonard wasted no time. He stormed forward, pointing at Grace like she was already guilty. "That's her. She hit my son. Look at him. Look at the bruise." Officer Cooper's eyes flicked to the boy clinging to his father's side, then to Grace, who looked as if the floor beneath her feet had been ripped away. He held up a hand, his voice calm. "All right, let's slow this down. Mr. Hastings, I'll need to hear from everyone before we jump to conclusions." Grace exhaled shakily, a sliver of hope piercing through her fear. Maybe this officer would listen. Maybe he would see her truth. But Leonard scoffed. "What more do you need to hear? My son is hurt," he said. "The maid did it, and you can see it with your own eyes." Officer Cooper crouched to Michael's level, his voice soft. "Hey, buddy. Can you tell me what happened?" Michael sniffled, glancing nervously at his father, then at Grace. He fidgeted with the sleeve of his shirt, avoiding the officer's eyes. His small chest rose and fell quickly. Grace's heart ached at the sight. She wanted to rush forward, to comfort him like she always did, but her feet were rooted in fear. Leonard's impatience crackled in the air. "Tell him, son. Tell him what she did." Michael's lips parted, but no sound came out. He glanced up at his father again, then down at the floor. Officer Cooper tilted his head, his tone even gentler. "It's okay, Michael. You don't have to be scared. I just want to hear from you. No one's in trouble for telling the truth." Grace swallowed hard, her palms slick with sweat. Deep down, she knew Michael wasn't cruel. He wasn't the kind of child to lie out of spite. Something else was happening, something she couldn't yet understand. Finally, Michael whispered, his voice barely audible. It wasn't. But before he could finish, Leonard cut in sharply. Speak up. Don't mumble. Michael's tiny body stiffened at his father's harsh tone. His hands balled into fists, and the tears welled up again. Grace felt her chest tighten. Every instinct screamed at her to defend him, to stop Leonard's intimidating presence, but she knew her words could make things worse. Officer Cooper, however, caught the shift in Michael's demeanor. He gently placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Take your time. Start from the beginning. Where were you when this happened? Michael hesitated, his gaze darting once more toward his father. Then, as though summoning courage from somewhere deep within, he finally spoke more clearly. I fell. I was running, and I tripped on the rug in the hallway. The room froze. Grace's breath caught in her throat, and for the first time since this nightmare began, a flicker of hope warmed her chest. Leonard's face went pale. What are you talking about? Michael lifted his arm, showing the bruise. I fell hard. Grace didn't hit me. She tried to help me up. His small voice cracked. I was just scared you'd be mad, Dad. The words hung heavy in the room, crashing against Leonard like a wave. For a moment, even his commanding presence faltered. Officer Cooper's eyes softened, though he kept his professional stance. That sounds important, Michael. Thank you for telling me. He turned his gaze toward Leonard. Sir, I think we need to talk this through more carefully. Grace's knees nearly gave way, relief washing over her like a flood. Yet the sting of the accusation still burned. The very man who trusted her to care for his home, for his son, had been willing to brand her a criminal without giving her a chance to speak. The night wasn't over. Far from it. The truth had surfaced, but the wound left behind, between Grace and the family she served, was only beginning to show its depth. And as Officer Cooper prepared to ask more questions, Grace realized this moment could change everything. Not just her job, but her entire life, and maybe even Michael's. The silence in the room was so thick it felt like a weight pressing on everyone's chest. Leonard stood frozen, his grip tightening on Michael's shoulder as if he didn't know what to do with the truth his son had just spoken. Grace clasped her hands in front of her apron, the sting of humiliation etched across her face. Relief that Michael had spoken the truth mixed with deep pain. She had worked tirelessly, sacrificing her own needs for years, only to have the man she served throw her reputation to the wolves without hesitation. Officer Cooper straightened slowly, his calm gaze moving between father and son. Mr. Hastings, it looks like there's been a misunderstanding. Kids get hurt all the time. Accidents happen. From what I'm hearing, this isn't a criminal matter. Leonard's face flushed. But, he came crying to me. He said he was hurt, and she was the only one around. What was I supposed to think? His voice cracked slightly, betraying the anger he used as armor. Grace finally spoke, her voice low but firm. You were supposed to think of me as a human being. Not a suspect. The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Leonard turned his head, avoiding her eyes, but the truth in her statement landed squarely in his conscience. Michael looked up at Grace, guilt flooding his small features. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice trembling. I didn't mean for you to get in trouble. I just didn't want Dad to be mad at me for running inside. Grace's heart softened instantly. She crouched to his level, her eyes filling with tears she refused to let spill. Sweetheart, it's not your fault. You don't have to be afraid of the truth. Officer Cooper stepped in, his voice steady but carrying weight. Mr. Hastings, I've been a cop for 20 years. I've seen families break apart because people stop listening to each other. Your son was scared of your reaction. That should tell you something. Leonard swallowed hard. He wanted to argue, to defend his quick judgment, but the image of Michael shrinking under his voice burned in his mind. The realization stung more than he wanted to admit. Leonard's words faltered. His pride battled with his conscience, and for once, his money and power couldn't shield him from the truth. He looked at Grace, then at Officer Cooper. "I made a mistake." Grace stood slowly, her chin lifted though her body trembled. "A mistake nearly ruined my life, Mr. Hastings. Do you know what would have happened if Michael hadn't spoken up? I'd be handcuffed right now. My little girl would be waiting at home wondering why her mother didn't come back." Her voice cracked at the end, raw and unfiltered. The thought of her daughter, Lila, sitting by the window waiting for her, was almost too much to bear. Officer Cooper nodded in agreement. "Accusations carry weight, especially when they come from people in your position. It's good the truth came out, but damage like this doesn't fade easy." Leonard's shoulders slumped, the first crack in the stone wall he had built around himself. For the first time in years, he felt the sharp pang of shame. He looked at Michael, who avoided his gaze, and then at Grace, who stood tall despite the tears brimming in her eyes. "I owe you an apology," Leonard admitted, the words tasting foreign in his mouth. "I judged too quickly. I let my fear cloud my judgment. I shouldn't have accused you." Grace's arms folded across her chest. She wanted to accept his apology, but part of her needed him to feel the weight of what he had done. She had worked too hard, endured too much, to let it slide easily. "You can apologize, Mr. Hastings," she said softly, "but trust, once broken, doesn't come back overnight." The honesty in her tone silenced the room again. Leonard lowered his head, realizing how far he had fallen in her eyes, and maybe in his son's too. Michael slipped from his father's grasp and walked over to Grace. He hugged her leg tightly, his small voice muffled in her apron. "Please don't leave, Grace. I need you." Grace's hand rested gently on his head, her heart breaking at the sincerity in his words. She knew Michael wasn't to blame, he was just a boy afraid of disappointing his father. But the image of Leonard pointing at her, ready to destroy her life, lingered like a shadow she couldn't shake. Officer Cooper cleared his throat. "Looks like things are settled for tonight. I'll write this up as a misunderstanding and close it. But Mr. Hastings, I suggest you take a closer look at how you handle situations at home. Your boy shouldn't be afraid of telling you the truth." Leonard nodded stiffly. "You're right." The officer gave Grace a reassuring nod before stepping out into the night, leaving the mansion quiet again. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Leonard finally whispered, "Grace, I don't expect you to forgive me tonight. But I want you to know, I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Grace looked at him, her eyes weary but resolute. "Making it right isn't about me, Mr. Hastings. It's about him." She nodded toward Michael, who still clung to her side. "He deserves a father he doesn't have to fear." Her words struck deeper than any accusation could. Leonard turned to his son, seeing for the first time not just the bruise on his arm, but the fear in his eyes. He knelt down, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Michael. I shouldn't have scared you. I shouldn't have doubted you." Michael's eyes filled with tears. He threw his arms around his father's neck, sobbing softly. Leonard held him close, guilt washing over him in waves. Grace stepped back, giving them space, though her chest ached with emotions she couldn't name. Watching them reconcile didn't erase the pain she had felt, but it reminded her of something important. Sometimes even the powerful needed to be humbled to find their humanity again. Later that night, as Grace gathered her things to leave, Leonard stopped her at the door. His voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. "I'll be reaching out tomorrow. Not about work. About how to fix this, if you'll let me try." Grace gave him a long, searching look. "Good night, Mr. Hastings." As she stepped into the cool night air, she lifted her face toward the sky. She thought of Lila, her little girl waiting at home, and of the boy upstairs who had found the courage to speak the truth. The night had almost destroyed her, but it had also revealed something powerful, her strength, Michael's bravery, and even the cracks in a billionaire's armor. Walking away from the mansion, Grace carried not just the sting of injustice but also the seed of something stronger, a reminder that dignity could not be stripped away by wealth, power, or fear. And perhaps, just perhaps, this painful night might be the beginning of change.